Yadavaamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashunvannotibhis Siddhasadanam Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhirvajinivati Dhinama Vitriyavato Ano Devo Brihata Parvatada Saraswati Yajata Gantu Yajnam Vagdevyai Namaha. So, welcome back to today's session. Thank you to Dr. Raju, to my friend Rohini for sending the uh, verse Subhashita. I just remembered the import of it. I had forgotten the verse, so they shared it with me. I also put it on the group. Um, just a few questions and comments from yesterday, and then we will resume with what we were studying. Uh, So there was a question from Keshava Rao ji about the Anvaya Krama of the verses and whether our book has it. So we have not included that in our translation or in the complete Bhagavad Gita. I am referring to a four-volume work which gives all the grammatical details of Bhagavad Gita. But I think a easier way to get access to that is to look at Gita Press, book number 17. That is a work which has the Padacheda as well as the Anvaya and the Hindi translation. But you can refer to it for Anvaya, generally quite reliable. And I also found online there is an interesting course from Vyoma Labs, which is again a very, very good resource. And I'll share the link. So they are specifically working on teaching Sanskrit. So if anybody want to use this opportunity, to after this course, having looked at the Gita, if you want to use this opportunity to study Sanskrit through the Gita, then I mean you can refer to this, look at this course. There's a website called sanskritfromhome.in, which has got amazing material, and most of the things are free. It's all pre-recorded videos, and they will explain very, very clearly with the focus on learning Sanskrit. So for anybody who want to go deeper into the language using this as a starting point, as a gateway, that's a good reference. Also interesting, when we come to the verses, we will see in yesterday's verses we saw that it's not possible to sit quiet and do nothing, because even the basic maintenance of the body requires us to do some work. So my uncle and co-author Dr. Sri Krishna, he often uses this example of there are so many universities in the world. They are teaching so many different courses, but there's not a single university which has a single course which teaches you to do nothing. So it'll teach you to do something. There is nothing, there's no course which teaches you to do nothing. So it is almost impossible for us to remain completely aloof and not be acting. Then also there's an interesting comment yesterday. A friend of mine, Srinidhi, who's a very good Sanskrit scholar himself and who's also attending this course, he had called me and we were just having a discussion about why there is a need for a third chapter. It was an interesting question. He asked me, he said, well, if you look at the questions that Arjuna has raised in the first chapter and the nature of the conflict and everything, the second chapter itself answers all those questions. If somebody understands the second chapter, what Krishna has said, there's no need for a further a third or fourth, anything. It's already done. So he said, why was there need for all the other chapters? Now, my view or the way I look at it is that there is a development in Arjuna's character across the 18 shlokas, 18 adhyayas. You can see this, slow softening of the character over a period of time. So, what does he end his big monologue with in the second chapter, in the ninth shloka. He puts down his weapons as he says, I will not fight. That is his state of mind at the start of the second chapter. Now, like I said earlier, at the point where Krishna says Kutastva Kashmalamidam Vishame Samupastitam, and when he says Klaibyam Masmagama Partha Naitatva Upapadyate, at that point itself, if it was just a very surfacial affliction, he would have just snapped out of it. Sometimes all we need is just a little bit of a push, and we are back into the game, we are back into our work, whatever, sometimes and there's a long project at the workplace, and there's this sagging interest in the team members. Sometimes just like a pizza party, and getting together the people and saying, hey, this is like we're in a crucial stage, guys, we need to put our act together, and let's deliver this whatever project by this date. Sometimes that's all it needs, that this the energy levels are flagging and you need a push. Sometimes if it's a even deep seated question, like in the case of Arjuna's, little more, a detailed response is required. No, already after the initial, discussion of Krishna, where he talks about the Atma and he talks about the importance of performing the Dharma, and the practical implications of getting out of war, and also he talks about the application of the theory. Then what does Arjuna say? He says, I would really like to know what is the nature of a Sthita Prajna, what are the characteristics, and so on. Now, in the beginning of the third chapter, he says that you're confusing me with two different messages. Now, tell me for sure what is right. Then later, a couple of chapters down the line, again, he says, jnana and karma. I'm confused, which is better. Should I go for this or should I go for that? And slowly, and then by the time of the fifth, sixth chapter, he is slowly getting convinced. And at the beginning of the 11th chapter, he says, my confusion is cleared. I just want to see your universal form. His confusion is cleared. He, after the few initial thing, he does not say, "I will not fight. Why are you forcing me to fight?" That's all gone. He's already convinced. Yes, I think what you say is right, but I have this question. I have this question, and so on. Now we must realize that in that heightened state of emotions and the of the war, Krishna is in an inspired mood, right? Even people who are regular orators or people who are musicians or dancers, there are some days where their inspiration strikes. Something, all the different components fit together. And when we realize as an audience that this person is inspired, we want to listen to more and more of that person. We don't want that concert to end. We don't want that discourse to end. We want to hear more because we can realize that this is really something inspired person at this point of time. So I remember once there were a group of friends had gone with Shatavdhani Ganesh, I think to one of our friends' village, and they were a group of 5 or 10 people. And after dinner, they were just chatting. It was a holiday; they were just chatting about different things. And suddenly there was a discussion that came about, and Ganesh sir started talking about Indian aesthetics. Now, Indian aesthetics is a topic that most of the people there were very familiar with. It's not something new to them, and they have heard innumerable lectures by Ganesh sir on this topic. But that day, post dinner, they were all sitting together, and he was talking about the various concepts, and they were all mesmerized because it's a moment of inspiration. So 1.5 hours he spoke about different aspects of the thing. Unfortunately, I was not there. I heard about it from my friend Kashyap. So he said, it was like an inspired thing. So many things, all of them flashing together. He's making all the small connections between seemingly different ideas. That the friends were like, you don't stop, continue speaking about this, because they realize that. So like this, Krishna, Arjuna realizes that Krishna is inspired. That's why he want to know more. He asks him, "Ha, so you tell me about the nature of a realized person. So when you say guna tita in the 14th chapter, he says, what is the nature of a person who has gone beyond the gunas? I want to know more about this. So this kind of good opportunity for me to clarify all my doubts. That's Arjuna's mindset. This guy is in an inspired state. Let me try to find out more and more and understand better. So that's the mindset. So we see that there is a progressive improvement of Arjuna. And if you like, one of the things I told Srinidhi was because he has probably read the Gita also number of times, that you just go through and look at only the parts which says Arjuna Uvacha, and you will see that improvement across the time. Because there are large chunks, like for example, I think in the 13th chapter and 7th chapter, it's only Krishna who's speaking. There is no Arjuna Uvacha at all. There is no Sanjaya Uvacha. There is only Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So it's fairly a straightforward exercise, maybe 15-minute exercise to go through all the lines that Arjuna has spoken. That will give an idea of the development of his character and his acceptance of the war. So, although second chapter would have sufficed, although the second and third padya of the second chapter would have sufficed, we are grateful that Arjuna had this delusion. Otherwise, we would not have got this great text. So, we have to be ever grateful for Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So, now let us get back to. Thank you. Shivali ji has shared a link for Sanskrit from home. I'll send you a specific link for this Bhagavad Gita thing. Okay, so let's share the screen. Okay. So yesterday we saw that Arjuna starts off by this doubt saying that you are praising both the Karma Marga as well as the Jnana Marga. Tell me for certain which is the right path, because you're confusing me with this conflicting message. And immediately Krishna says that I have always said in the past also that there are two main paths. One is the path of knowledge, or the Jnana Marga, Jnana Yoga, which is best suited for deep thinkers and who like to contemplate, who like to analyze, who like to reason. And then there is the Karma Marga, Karma Yoga, which is the path of selfless action that is best suited for people who are active and who like to work hard and who like to focus on action rather than thinking. Now, does it mean that a person who is a karma yogi is a mindless fellow, or does it mean that the jnana yogi is a lazy fellow? No, it is just that some people's innate characteristics lean towards either action or analysis or devotion. So that is what it means. So it does not mean that they are mutually exclusive. It is just that there is greater proclivity, greater tendency towards one of these three. And at the end of the day, human being is a kind of a holistic being, right? You can't break them down into different parts. You can't typecast people into a specific like a pigeonhole, because they have so many facets to their personality. Whereas what we are trying to do is we are looking at the dominant traits and roughly give a sort of categorization for the ease of understanding. So just because somebody is a jnana yogi does not mean he lacks bhakti, he is lazy, he only thinking. No, his tendency is towards thinking and reasoning rather than blind belief. A person who is by nature they are a little more skeptical. There are some people by nature they are a little more believing. So like this, the different shades in the personality of people. So based on that, these broad classifications have been drawn. Now, so the third chapter starts off by talking about how nobody can remain passive for even for a moment. Everybody is drawn into action by natural impulses. Even the basic maintenance of your body requires you to act. Therefore, a person who suppresses his karmendriyas, the five organs of action, and allows his jnanendriyas to run wild, he's a hypocrite who has fooled himself. He's not a serene person. Whereas a person like Krishna, who is in the middle of the battlefield, who's using the karmendriyas for actively participating in the war, mentally is detached from the Indriya Vishaya, or the sense objects or the sensates. He is not mentally, he is detached, but physically he is engaging in action. So that is the ideal. Doing the work that we are supposed to do is better than laziness. And except when human beings work for the sake of yajna, they are bound by the actions, bound by the results of the action. So, therefore, we must work in a spirit of yajna. Now, like I have mentioned earlier, yajna specifically refers to a Vedic fire ritual where the fire is raised in a closed altar. We add haves and samit and different kinds of um, you know offerings into the fire. Um, but here he is talking about the spirit of yajna, which is an act of self dedication or a service above self, or work itself is like worship. Like kaya kave kailasa, Basavanna says, right, in one of his vachanas. So work itself is uh, worship. Work itself leads to the highest realm. So you don't have to wait to do something and then reach some highest level. By engaging sincerely in work itself, it is like reaching Swarga, reaching Kailasa, reaching Vaikunta, whatever. So, work as worship is the spirit of yajna. Then Krishna says, Saha yajna praja srishtva purovacha prajapati anena prasavishyadvam esha vostvishta kamadhuk. Saha yajna praja srishtva purovacha prajapati anena prasavishyadvam esha vostvishta kamadhuk. So long ago, Prajapati, the lord of creatures, Prajapati, Praja is creatures, Pati is lord, Prajapati, the lord of the creatures, brought forth human beings with the spirit of yajna, and he said the following words: By this spirit of yajna you shall grow. May this grant you all your desires. So Prajapati, Pura, long ago, Saha yajna praja srishtva uvacha. Saha yajna, along with yajna, prajaha, people, creatures, beings, citizens, children. All praja means all these things. But in this case, it refers to people, the creatures, human beings. So, saha yajna prajaha srishtva, having created all human beings along with the spirit of yajna, along with the idea of yajna, along with the concept of yajna, uvacha, he spoke these words. What did he say? Anena, which is yajnena, by yajna, prasavishwadhvam, prasavishyadhvam, because it is a madhyam purusha. It is he's speaking to the people. So by this you will grow. Prasavishyadhvam, you will grow. Esha vaha ishtakamadhuk astu. This will be an ishtakamadhuk for you. Esha, this will be vaha for you. Ishtakamadhuk refers to kamadhenu. So the divine cow that grants all the desires. So ishtakamadhuk astu. It will become an ishtakamadhuk. It will become the kamadhenu for you. It will grant you all your desires. Right? So the spirit of yajna will ensure. So one of the underlying thing here is this: when you are working with the spirit of yajna, naturally the focus is on the action and getting enjoyment from the action. So the desires, you feel that your desires are fulfilled because you are not expecting something else, you are enjoying the action, right? So that's probably what he's trying to say when he says this. Okay, so let's repeat after I'll say the line once and you can repeat. You've done this before. सह यज्ञाः प्रजाः सृष्ट्वा
सह यज्ञाः प्रजाः सृष्ट्वा
पुरोवाच प्रजापतिः
पुरोवाच प्रजापतिः
अनेन प्रसविष्यध्वम्
अनेन प्रसविष्यध्वम्
एष वोस्त्विष्ट कामधुक्.
एष वोष्ट्विष्टकामधुक्
एषः वः तु इष्ट. So एष वोस्त्विष्ट कामधुक्. Then the next one, he says, देवान् भावयतानेन ते देवा भावयन्तु वः परस्परं भावयन्तः श्रेयः परमवाप्स्यथ. So by this spirit of yajna, you nourish the devas. They will reward you in return by mutually uh, nourishing one another. You will attain the highest good. You will attain the highest goal. So anena, again, by this yajnena, devan bhavayata, you nourish the devas, you offer to the devas. Te devaha vaha bhavayantu, and these devas, they will reward you in return. They will nourish you. You nourish them, they will nourish you. Evam parasparam, mutually bhavayantaha, nourishing each other, param shreyaha avapsyatha. So you will attain the highest good. Param shreyaha. You will attain the highest level of prosperity and goodness. Now, what are the devas? Who are these people? We will come to that after the next verse. So these three verses are like a set. And this is also Prajapati is continuing to speak. So he says, by this you nourish the devas, they will nourish you, and this mutual nourishment will lead to the highest good. Devan bhavayatanena, Bhargava,
देवान् भावयतानेन
te deva bhavayantu vaha
ते देवा भावयन्तु वः
parasparam bhavayantah
परस्परं भावयन्तः
श्रेयः param avapsyatha.
श्रेयः परम् अवाप्स्यत.
Then he goes on to the next. He says, Ishtan bhogan hi vo deva dasyante yajna bhavitaha tair dattan apradayaibhyo yo bhungte stena evacha saha. Pleased with your selfless service, the devas will fulfill your wishes, and one who enjoys those gifts without giving back anything in return is indeed a thief. Yajna bhavitaha devaha, the one who have attained a bhaga in the yajna, one who have been pleased by the yajna, who are pleased with this selfless service of yours, the devas, vaha, to you, ishtan bhogan hi dasyante. They will give you whatever you desire. Ishtan, the desired bhogan, enjoyments, they will dasyante, they will grant you whatever you desire. Taihi, by them, dattan ebhyaha, whatever has been given by them, these apradaya yaha bhunkte, without pradana, apradaya, without sharing with others, without offering to others, yaha, those bhunkte, who eat it, who consume it, saha stenaha eva, they are as good as thieves. You see the standard he is setting. A thief is a person who has not done anything, who has gone and robbed somebody else's uh, object. But here, Krishna is saying, whatever gifts you receive from the Devas, if you don't share that, you are as good as a thief. You see the complete change of the, so the thief is for us, it's a person who doesn't deserve the stuff that he has got, and he has taken somebody else's property. Here, so sorry, Venkat ji has raised his hand. Is it, if you have a question, can you type it in the chat? Or if you're not able to hear me, then I will check. So if there is a question, Venkat ji, can you please type it in the chat? The hand is still up. Okay. Yeah, probably he'll send it by a chat to one of us. Okay. So he's raising the standards. Now let's look at these three verses together once again. Um, so Prajapati, lot of creatures, brought forth human beings to the spirit of yajna. He says, by this spirit of yajna, you will grow, and it'll may this grant you all your desires. Then he says, you nourish the devas and they nourish you. So who are these devas? Right now, um, the concept of devas can be understood in multiple ways, and I think it's also a good time for me to explain one concept which I was holding up for later. But anyway, it may be a good time now, and then we can discuss this set of verses in that background. You see, in our tradition, we have given three levels of meaning to any, we approach anything with at three levels of meaning. When it is pertaining purely to the material level, to the world of matter, to the world of transaction, to the material world, right? What is the world around us? We call this as adhibhuta. So this is the reality at the level of matter. When it is a reality, when it is at the level of our emotions and feelings and beliefs, that is called adhidaiva. Okay, so this is at the level of belief. Then when it is at the level of personal experience, it is called adhyatma. So now when we take the concept of deva in the adhibhuta sense of the word, devas are like the natural infrastructure. So we have so much of natural infrastructure that supports our existence, like sunshine, like rain, rivers, mountains, trees, animals. All these different aspects of nature are supporting our existence. If there was no sunshine, there would be no life on earth. So similarly, if there were no plants, there would be no life on earth. If there were no animals, there would be no life on earth. If there are no insects, there would be no life on earth. So like this, all these natural infrastructure, thunder and lightning, clouds, rain, oceans, rivers, mountains, all these things we can think of as devas. And these aspects were deified by our ancestors, and each of the deities were the presiding god, presiding deity over some aspect of nature. So if you see Marut, there's like a storm gods. Then Indra is in charge of rain. Varuna is in charge of water, and Rita, Agni is fire, Parjanya, rain. Like this, different deities are responsible for different infrastructure of nature. So unless we nourish this natural infrastructure by being ecologically friendly, by planting trees, whatever, what we have to do to nourish them, then they nourish us. So unless it is a mutual process, so like initially the parents take care of the children, and then the parents grow older, the children take care of the parents, and they take care of their children, and the cycle goes on, right? Similarly, when we initially when we plant a tree, when we are putting a sapling in the soil, or we put a seed and we put water, we nourish it in the early years slowly, when it's in the growing stage. After a period of time, the tree nourishes us by giving us flowers and fruits and shade and all these things, right? So it's a mutual nourishment. It's not a one way. It is not that only the tree has to give, or only we have to give. Because if it is a one way nourishment, it will not sustain. Because how long can somebody be selfless and do without any expectation? There will be some expectation. So always a two-way nourishment is important, even in, like, say, a relationship or a friendship, right? If you are the one in the friendship, if you are got a close friend and you are doing everything for this person and you are not receiving anything in return from that person, that friendship won't last, because it become a transaction, and it will slowly fade away. Whereas if there is a mutual nourishment happening between two friends, that friendship will be very strong, because each person needs the other very badly. Whereas if it is like only one person is always helping out, always doing all the dirty work, and other person enjoying the benefits of it, it will not sustain. Same thing with nature, same thing with the devas. So when we nourish the devas, they nourish us in return. When we ensure that there are a lot of trees, then there will be rain. There will be a reduction in the temperature. If you are going to cut all the trees and make it into a barren land, the temperature will go up and there will be climate change, all these things. Now, devas at the level of Adhibhuta are this natural infrastructure. Devas at the level of Adhidaiva become these deities that we revere. So our the deities we worship, the belief that we have that they will take care of us, whatever it could be, worship of Ganapati, worship of Vishnu or Devi or whatever, Muruga, anything, whatever we worship and we have a faith, that comes under the purview of Adhidaiva. Adhyatma is when this entire process of nourishing the natural infrastructure and being nourished by them and revering them as a deity, from that, if I am able to elevate my own standard, if I am able to find peace within myself, I am able to realize the Devatva in me, that becomes Adhyatma. It gets into the level of personal experience and enrichment. So, here he says that Devas will grant you, pleased with your selfless service, Devas will fulfill your wishes. Now, you are a very honest person. You are, let's say, you are having a farmland, you're growing trees, you're growing grains, and you're being very eco friendly. Then there are a bountiful rains, and you have a fantastic crop, right? So now this crop is in your hands. But if you don't share this with other people, if you eat everything yourself, then you are as good as a thief. Because the notion in Bhagavad Gita is, even if you picked a fruit that has fallen by the wayside of its own accord, even if you are picking a dry leaf and putting it into your mouth, it should not be done with a sense of entitlement. It should be done with a sense of gratitude that you have received something, because you have, at the end of the day, received it from nature. You are not created it by hand. So that reverence and respect for what we receive is underlined here. Okay, so let's just go back to the verse. He says, Ishtan bhogan hi vo deva
इष्टान् भोगान् हि वो देव
dasyante yajna bhavitaha
दास्यन्ते यज्ञभाविताः
tair dattan apradayaibhyo
तैर्दत्तान् अप्रदायैभ्यो
यो भुङ्क्ते स्तेन एव सः.
यो भुङ्क्तेस्तेन एव सः
Then he goes on to say, Yajna Shishtashinah Santo Muchyante Sarva Kilbishaihi Bhunjate Te Tvagam Papa Ye Pachantyatma Karanat. Wise people eat the food that remains after being offered to yajna. Thus, they are released from all evils. Whereas the wicked people, wicked ones, prepare food for their own sake and they subsist on papa alone. They only live on papa because they prepare food for their own selves and they don't share with other people. Yajna Shishta. So Yajna Shishta is remaining, or the remainder of Yajna. Yajna Shishta Ashinaha. Those who eat the remnants of what has been offered to Yajna, Santaha, the noble ones, Sarva Kilbishaihi Muchyante. They are released from all evils. The good people, the noble ones who partake of food after offering it to Yajna, they are released from all evils. Ye papaha, those um, Atma Karanat Pachanti, those who cook food only for themselves. So these people who are wicked, papaha, like wicked people, Atma Karanat Pachanti, te tu agham bhunjate. So they indeed subsist on uh, sin. They subsist on papa, on agha. Agha is sin or papa. So what they are eating is actually papa, not food, because it is prepared only for themselves. So we see this very, very strong notion of sharing and involving people in the early works, starting from the Vedas all through the Shruti texts and the Smriti literature. We see this very strong notion of sharing. And especially in the early days, it would have been so important to share and live as a community. Today, because of technology, because of so many conveniences, we have the illusion that we can live all by ourselves because we have Swiggy and Zomato and Amazon and Big Basket and all these things. We think that, oh, I can just be independent and not be connected with anybody. But really, if you go deeper into this, there are so many people who are connected in this supply chain. And if we don't recognize that, and if we are close minded, then who is the loser? It is we who are the losers, because one of the, like, I was reading interesting work on a study of the blue zones around the world, where people are characteristically in those zones, they live beyond like 90 and 100, and they lead a good quality of life even at that age. And one of the things this guy has found is that uh, people who are in these communities living together at the old age, they have a very good social network. That is when they can be pleasant and happy and leading a good quality of life. So the social network, it need not only be a family network, it can be friends, it can be neighbors. But at the end of the day, if somebody is always alone, unless is a really a very, very realized person, a great wise person, where it doesn't matter whether they are alone or whether they're with somebody else, if they are reached that stage, yoga ratova bhoga ratova sangha ratova sangha vihina, that kind of a stage, for most other 99.9999% of the people, it's very important to have a social group and share. When we share something, when we cook something and share with our friends, it is a different kind of enjoyment. When we are cooking ourselves and eating ourselves, watching some television program and cursing the food ourselves, this is like it's of no use. Whereas when we are preparing something together and sharing, and multiple people preparing different things, and we are all partaking of that, you see the kind of positive vibes that it creates. So there is a lot of emphasis given on sharing. He says yajna shishta santo
यज्ञशिष्टाशिनः सन्तो
मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषैः
मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषैः
भुञ्जते ते त्वघं पापा
भुञ्जते ते त्वघं पापा
ये पचन्त्यात्मकारणात्.
ये पचन्त्यात्मकारणात्.
Then he goes on to give this connectivity. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyad anna sambhavah yajnad bhavati parjanyo yajna karma samudbhavah. So living beings are sustained by anna, food. Food comes forth from rain. Rain is caused by yajna, and yajna is born out of action. His annat bhutani bhavanti. So beings are sustained by food. So now when we are consuming food, what happens to the food we eat? Part of the food we eat becomes energy and gives us the strength to do our work. A part of the food that we eat helps in building our body. So the food that we eat actually becomes our body in part. So both matter and energy are obtained from food. So we are what we eat. So if I'm eating something, that is becoming me, correct? So therefore, human beings are sustained by food. And food, parjanyat anna sambhavaha. So, and we have to add that bhavati, we have to do an adhyahara. Parjanyat anna sambhavaha. From rain, we get food. This is pretty clear. Parjanyaha yajnat bhavati. Parjanya is caused, the rain is caused by yajna. This is not clear at all. Then we go to the next part. Yajna karma samudbhavaha. And yajna comes from karma, from action. Okay, there's something in the chat. Okay. Okay, I'll come to this question later. Fine. So, the out of the four things here which is listed, three are pretty clear. Human beings are sustained by food, no doubt about that. Uh, Food is caused by rain. Again, we know that very clearly because of the rains, all the grains grow and we get the food. Trees and everything grow because of the rain. Then we know that yajna is caused by karma, by action. If we don't act, there is no yajna, because yajna itself, in a literal sense, it is a fire ritual, which means we have to do some action. In the metaphorical sense, it means working in a spirit of sacrifice, with a spirit of worship, service above self, all these things, again, for which we have to have some action. So the three parts are clear. But what is not clear from the first reading is the Sparjanyaha Yajnat Bhavati. Rain is caused by Yajna. So the literal meaning here is that you do Yajna and it will rain. But we know this is not true, right? If you do some, I will do some Yajna tomorrow in Sahara Desert, it won't rain. How will it rain in Sahara Desert? So we have to take this not literally. So when the basic meaning of a verse or a statement fails, then we have to take the implied meaning. This is the literary tradition in India. The way in which the literary tradition has developed is when the literal meaning fails, we go to see the implied meaning. Okay, so when the implied meaning also is not very clear, we go to the suggested meaning. So this is known as Abhida, Lakshana, and Vyanjana. So the terms are not important, but basically now this literal meaning is not very clear. Um, Therefore, we have to go to the implied meaning. What is the implied meaning? It is important for us to work selflessly in order to maintain the natural infrastructure. So, if we are respectful towards nature, if we are being eco friendly, then naturally the infrastructure which we have, rain and the rivers and the forests and the mountains and and all these things will be conducive to us. Whereas if we are not eco-friendly, if we are not, keeping in mind the larger good, and we are being very selfish, then the chances of support from the natural infrastructure comes down. So therefore, the idea is that the natural cycle should be maintained, and we should not disrupt this natural cycle, right? So the the meaning of this shloka should not be taken in a literal sense, saying that, oh, we do yajna in order to get rain. But this maintenance of the natural cycle is very important, because if we take it in a literal sense, then it should not rain in United States or in some other part of the world where they don't have concept, they don't have yajna at all. Physical yajna is not there, but the concept of yajna is universal, working as a worship, working with a higher ideal. This every culture has, everybody will, there will be a lot of people around the world who have realized this intuitively. But it's only in India, in the Sanatana Dharma tradition, where we have a yajna in a physical sense. So therefore, this doesn't make sense if you take yajna as um, a fire ritual. At the same time, it doesn't make sense if you say, "Oh, Krishna has said something; he doesn't know what he's saying." So, after saying all these fantastic, brilliant things, suddenly one pada of one shloka, he just babbles something, right? So, this is also not doesn't make sense. We should not doubt Krishna's intelligence. At the same time, we should not doubt our intelligence also. So this is very important. He's also an intelligence guy. He knows what he's saying. He's a very wise person. He's a realized soul. He's saying these words, and we are not total idiots. We can make out that this doing yajna does not immediately bring rain. So that means there is some gap, right? There's something missing. So then we say, okay, wait, let's try to understand what he's implying. And then when we go to the next implied meaning, it becomes clear that there is a natural cycle and we try to maintain that natural cycle. Otherwise, it won't work. And yajna, the sense of spirit of, working with a higher ideal, working as worship and so on, requires us to act. It requires karma. It requires selfless action. And that's exactly what is the maintenance of the ecological balance and so forth, right? So let's go to the verse. Annad bhavanti bhutani
अन्नात् भवन्ति भूतानि
parjanyad anna sambhavaha
पर्जन्यादन्नसम्भवः
yajnad bhavati parjanyo
यज्ञात् भवति पर्जन्यो
yajnah karma samudbhavaha.
यज्ञः कर्मसमुद्भवः
Then he goes on to say, Karma Brahmodbhavam Vidhi Brahmakshara Samudbhavam Tasmat Sarvagatam Brahma Nityam Yagne Pratishtitam. This action originates from Brahman, which is the manifestation of the imperishable. Therefore, the all pervading Brahman is always established in Yajna. So, karma brahmodbhavam, brahma udbhavam vidhi. Know that karma comes from Brahman. So, this is a continuation of the previous verse. So, yajna comes from karma, karma comes from Brahman, the all pervading spirit. And Brahma akshara samudbhavam vidhi. So, know that Brahman is a manifestation of the akshara, the imperishable. Kshara means perishable, which is short lived. Akshara means that which it never perishes. It is indestructible. It has no concept of creation and destruction. Akshara. Tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yagne pratishtitam. So therefore, sarvagatam brahma, the all pervading brahma, is always nityam, eternally, always yagne pratishtitam. In yajna is it is established. So the supreme being is established in uh, yajna. So here, basically, what he's talking about is the connectivity of the food giving us nourishment. The food is being caused by rain. Rain is being caused by the spirit of yajna maintaining the natural cycle. Maintaining the natural cycle requires us to act in a certain way, which is appropriate, which is sensible. That action itself derives from the Brahman, which is a manifestation of the imperishable. What we can understand this verse is that Brahman, although it is an abstract concept, it is like an all-pervading thing. When Brahman manifests in the material world, we look at it as, adhering to dharma. So the karma should adhere to dharma, should be sustainable. Only when something is sustainable, and it kind of, you write an equation and it sustains, it tends to eternity, tends to infinity. If it something is eternally sustaining, then it becomes imperishable. If you have a perpetual motion machine, if it is created, it will forever, it will give energy. In the physical world, in the material world, it may not be possible, but in the larger context, this concept of dharma is to ensure sustainability and eventually reach the state of being imperishable. So that's what he's implying when he says that the all pervading brahma is established in this selfless work, which is adhering to dharma, which helps tend things to sustainability, which is the ultimate idea. Okay. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi.
कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि
Brahmakshara samudbhavam.
ब्रह्माक्षरसमुद्भवम्
Tasmat sarvagatam brahma.
तस्मात् सर्वगतं ब्रह्म
Nityam yagnye pratishthitam.
नित्यं यज्ञे प्रतिष्ठितम्
एवं प्रवर्तितं चक्रम नानुवर्त नानुवर्तयत न अनुवर्तयतीह यः नानुवर्तयतीह यः अघायुरिन्द्रियारामो मोघं पार्थ स जीवति. So the wheel of life is thus set in motion. This is the wheel of life. And indulging in sensual pleasures, those who violate this natural order live in papa, wasting their life. Their lives become futile. So Partha, yaha, those enam pravartitam chakram, iha na anuvartayati, those who do not adhere to this uh, wheel of life, indriyaramaha, indriya aramaha, aghayuhu saha mogham jivati. Saha mogham jivati is their lives are in vain, their lives are futile, their lives are useless, they are wasting their life. And aghayuhu, so they lead their life in papa, they live in papa. And so the point is, now when we realize that this is the natural wheel of life, or the circle of life, where food nourishes the individual, food comes from rain, rain comes from worship, work as worship, spirit of yajna, that comes from action aligned to dharma, which in turn comes from brahman, which is established, which is an imperishable indestructible being, and established in yajna, the spirit of working selflessly. When this circle of life, this wheel of life is so this is how the wheel of life is set in motion. And when people who are more interested in their own sensual pleasures, their own selfish, small-minded, selfish needs, and are willing to violate uh, this cycle of life, this wheel of life, they lead their life in papa. They have a wretched life. It's a life of crime, life of sin, and it's a wasted life. If when we don't align with this wheel of life, and we don't nourish, we don't become an important cog in this grand wheel, and we try to do something against it, then our life is wasted. Because when we think of our life as something which should nourish our existence, which should make us attain ananda, and should make us an instrument for other people to attain the ananda, then we feel our life is worthwhile, it is fulfilled, it has a purpose. Whereas if the purpose of my life is just for me, one person, to suck all the nutrients from the world, and be fulfilling the sensual and the physical needs, then that's exactly the definition of a parasite. So the purpose of life is not to become a parasite. The purpose of life is for us to grow and to share and to be an important member of the human race, right? So very nicely as brought out in these verses. Evam pravartitam chakram
एवं प्रवर्तितं चक्रं
nanu vartayati hayaha
नानुवर्तयति हयः
aghayurindriyaramo
अघायुरिन्द्रियारामो
mogham partha sa jivati.
मोघं पार्थ स जीवति.
So then now we move on to the next set of verses. We will he starts talking about people who have gone beyond this, people who are leading this high quality of life. So now he has talked about the people who are like the wasted life and who are living in sin. They are only eating what they are cooking, not sharing with people. So all the bad behavior he has spoken about. Now from verse 17 onwards, he starts talking about what happens with wise people who adhere to these norms and lead a good quality of life. Okay, now we'll come to this question um, that Rajeshwari ji had. Shloka 13 is the bhava here, one of Samarpanam. Um, and she has referred to a shloka of Samartha Ramdas, the guru of Shivaji. Udara Bharana Nuhi Jani, something which I don't know. Probably it's in Marathi from Das Bodh or something. That eating is not simply filling one's stomach, but know the act of eating also is a yajna karma. I think in some cultures they recite this before eating a meal, a very nice uh, idea, because the moment we feel entitled in any form, right, then there is naturally a boosting of the ego. Whereas when we are not feeling entitled, uh, we are there is more opportunity for us to connect with our true self. For example, if we go to a restaurant and we are paying like a huge amount of money, it's a very very fancy restaurant, and we expect the service to be very good. We expect that the food will be clean and it'll be like this, and even if there's a small speck on the white plate, we complain and we say, what the hell, I mean, I'm not paying good money for this kind of bad uh, you know uh, establishment, and so on. So our expectations are so high when we go to a fancy restaurant. Oh, it should be like this. This is what we want. This is not okay. There's too much of salt here. Why are you taking so much time to do all this? Whereas when we go to when we are on a journey somewhere, going to a tirtha yatra, or we are traveling somewhere and we are really famished, and we're not able to find um, um, food, and suddenly we land up in a dharma satra, and somebody says, oh, please come sit down here, we will give you some food. And the way in which you accept that, because you are, they are doing you a favor by feeding you, and when you have the sense that these people are so nice, they don't have to do this to me at all, but they are going out of their way to feed me, and they themselves are very poor, but they are helping me and they are feeding me. When we have that bhava, then suddenly you feel, oh my god, this is very good food. You don't analyze, you don't say, oh, uppu jasti aitu kara kammi aitu. We don't say any of that. We just accept it as amrita. So when we are with a sense of entitlement, then naturally there is more agitation. When we are receiving things with a sense of gratitude, then naturally the ego is suppressed and there is a overall positive feeling. So that is the thing. Yeah, yeah, there are some peacock. You might have heard some peacock sounds in the background. I'm in Coimbatore to come to meet my cousin. They live in a beautiful retirement community. A lot of peacocks and nature here. So that's the secret of that. Well, good. Thank you so much, and we'll meet tomorrow again. I'll be back in my desk. You will see a different background. So thank you so much. Om Tat Sat.